Welcome to the party.
Oh, Greg, I am geeking out.
You really are.
I really am. I'm going to apologize to our guests shortly for the freak out I may do throughout this podcast. But, Greg, this is one of our big gets. I'm so excited. I'm tickled to death he even answered the email and replied back to me. And I think that speaks a lot about his character and how humble of a guy he really is. Who we have with us is international best-selling novelist Matthew Reilly. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Johnny. Hey, Greg. Good to be here.
Good.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
How's it going with quarantine? How are you?
Yeah, how you doing?
So I live here in LA, and it's been strange. It's been strange. And as a writer, when it first started, I thought this isn't so bad. I work from home now. I've got a lot more time, and I actually went sort of hell for leather into my next book, the final book of the Jack West series, and I found I had too much time on my hand. I was working too much. I had to sort of pull myself back, slow myself down a little.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
What he said at the start, it was new, scary, and so a little bit exciting. Now it's not new, still scary, and it's just becoming Groundhog Day.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. How is it in LA? Is it anywhere where I'm from, Illinois, Chicago area? Greg's from Wisconsin. I know Greg's rules are a little bit, it feels like your state's a little more relaxed. Mine's still kind of tight. And I heard LA is crazy.
Yeah, it's been pretty tight.
Yeah.
The local mall is closed. Any indoor mall is closed. The scariest thing for us was the first riots were a block away from our house.
Oh.
And it was pretty bad. In terms of COVID, the people around here, everybody wears a mask, and if you're out on the street, you might have your mask sort of down a little bit. But you see people 40 yards away, and you both sort of raise your mask. And it's just a lot of people here in LA. LA County, 10 million people in it, so it's just a large place.
Yeah. I did. You're referring to the riots with help me out, Greg. George.
Yeah, the George Floyd.
Yeah, those riots, right?
The uprisings.
Yeah. It's a shame. Greg and I have been talking about for, it seems forever, that everybody just needs to give each other a big hug. Tell them it's going to be okay.
Yeah, people, it's funny. I talked to some people. A guy I know, he had a bit of a meltdown in a store, when we first were told to wear masks. And he was like, it's my right not to wear a mask. And I think there's an underlying anxiety out there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Some mornings I wake up at 4:30 for no reason in the morning. We're told there's something out there that's it's dangerous, it's life-threatening. Yeah. And I think the weirdest thing about the whole COVID experience is, in movie terms, it's all happening off screen. It's happening in hospital emergency rooms. And we see some doctors on Twitter, and there aren't many photos. They're not showing these emergency rooms being overwhelmed. So we're all trying to do our bit, but the real drama is happening off screen. And we just have to all sort of dig deep a little bit. But I think it makes a lot of people anxious, irritable, and short. I don't think this is the time to honk your horn too severely at somebody or yell at somebody to put their mask on, because they might turn around and really, you don't know how anxious somebody else is.
Right. You don't know if that's the last. Yeah, you don't know if that's the last thing that they need, type thing. Yeah. I think that's good. So you're in LA now. Where did you grow up?
So I was born and raised in Sydney, Australia. Okay. And I moved to LA at the start of 2015. So I was writing my books. I went to a Jesuit high school. I went to law school at university, and was 24 in 1998 when Ice Station came out. And so I've been writing professionally for 22 years, and most of it was from Australia. And I was doing movie deals in Hollywood from Sydney, Australia, and I'd fly here and do meetings. And I wanted to do more in the movie world, and starting to bear fruit right now, actually. So,
oh, cool.
Nice.
I definitely want to get to that because I have some ideas.
Well, and did I read that right? That you were your first book, and I apologize. I've read one of your books.
sure.
John was very much a fan, and he's like, "You got to read this." And I'm like, "Okay." For me, I'm dyslexic, so I read very slow. So Audible's been a savior.
Yep.
But reading your bio, I mean, you were 19. Did I read that right
Yeah.
when your first book came out?
Yeah.
Which is crazy because that puts us right around the same age, and I'm like, I can't imagine, being prolific enough to write a novel at the age of 19. I mean, I didn't even start using my brain, I think, until I was probably 22.
It was there's this whole thing, and the Malcolm Gladwell idea of 10,000
Oh,
hours.
10,000 hours. Yeah.
When I was like 7, it's 1981, and I'm watching The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Return of the Jedi is about to come out,
Mhm.
and I'm
Never heard of those.
I'm
just kidding.
Those are movies, right?
And throughout the 80s, I just watched movies, and there's Die Hard behind me here, and I did my 10,000 hours of study of story throughout my teenage years. And when I wrote Contest, which is a guy fighting aliens inside the New York Public Library in a big old fight to the death, I wanted to make action movies. And since nobody would give me $100 million to make an action movie, I wrote a book, which would be a $100 million action movie. And as Johnny would understand, moving from Contest to Ice Station was an exponential leap up because Ice Station's a $150 million movie on paper.
Yeah.
And this is what I discovered ultimately when I sold the movie rights. Paramount bought the rights to Ice Station way back.
Oh, did they?
Oh, yeah. And,
cool.
And, what you suddenly realize is that major movie studios like Paramount, Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, they only make 6 or 7 $100 million movies a year. There aren't many made. And increasingly, we're going down the path of comic books. Marvel, DC, these are your standard intellectual property sort of things. So it's funny, I have gleefully made my books bigger and bigger over the years because I don't have to pay for it in book form.
Sure.
You go up to the Great Zoo of China, which is essentially Jurassic Park with dragons.
Yeah.
And Sony bought the rights to that. Got a great screenplay done, hired a director, and this was looking like $120 million blockbuster movie.
Right.
And then it fell apart. They didn't make it.
Well, I think maybe that's just on hold.
No, the rights.
Oh, no?
The rights for that have come back to me.
Oh.
Yep. You hear that a lot. I mean, I hear about I've heard about movies that are finished, like they're in the can, but either the rights had reversed back to the original owner, or studio politics played into it, or something like that, and to where they've got a finished movie that will never be shown anywhere unless someone steals a bootleg. And it's like, it's nice that all those people that were involved in the production, had jobs, they got paid, but the studio's just sitting on it.
It's there are several answers to that. One is studio legal departments suck. Honestly, there must be a point where they don't even know what they actually own anymore. And there's a story I read about Stanley Kubrick. When Warner Brothers signed him up, they sent him to a warehouse in the Arizona desert, and that's where all the unproduced scripts that they owned were stored.
Yeah.
And Kubrick goes into it's like the Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse.
No kidding.
And Kubrick goes in and he's seeing all these screenplays by all these famous writers which have never seen the light of day. So that's the movie business.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
One of the other
go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
one of the other ventures that I'm involved in is a website called thepullbox.com, and we focus on independent comic book creators, and we do reviews and we help promote their projects and things like that. And when you're walking up and down Artist Alley at these Comic Cons and you see just these excellent creative works, and some of them are like, we've produced a book that maybe we'll make some money on, but their real hope is that and I'm usually in the Chicago area, but they've got somebody from a studio that will come by, see their book, and then maybe get it optioned or something like that could be turned into a screenplay and eventually a TV series or a movie or something. In fact, I just read Oblivion, the Tom Cruise movie Oblivion. They produced like a graphic novel. And they didn't do a large production run. They did like maybe 50 copies of it. And they took it to Comic-Cons. And then it was immediately snatched up by a production company. And then later on, they found out that was the entire plan. They never really planned on producing this comic. They just wanted it to get picked up. And it looked great. I've seen some of the pages. I'm like, yep, it looks like a storyboard. And that was their entire plan. And they made I like Oblivion. I think that's a pretty good movie. So it worked.
Yeah, and that movie was, a lot of people have their issues with Tom Cruise, but you got to give him credit. That was a time when he did Oblivion and Edge of Tomorrow. And two interesting science fiction films, which are not, old intellectual property. They were new, and credit Tom Cruise a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. I think I call the movie Live, Die, Repeat, but I think it's Edge of Tomorrow.
It is Edge of Tomorrow.
Because their slogans, their slogan when they were selling it said Live, Die, Repeat, and everybody thought that that's what the movie's name was. They didn't see at the bottom it said Edge of Tomorrow. But that's a fantastic sci-fi movie. Like, that's one of those, if it turns on the TV, I will sit down and watch it no matter where it is. And I'm almost a little upset it didn't, like, I didn't catch it at the beginning type of.
I'm really seeing a turn, like in Hollywood, going more towards like that classic sci-fi. I mean, Edge of Tomorrow was still a huge budget, but I just watched last night on Amazon. I watched Guns Akimbo with Daniel Radcliffe. It's like, slightly future, so maybe like 2050, I think, or something like that. And everybody's got their faces in the phones, just like Orwell said, and it was like, he's a troll. He's an internet troll. So he starts going off on this one show where it's like people hunting people. And he's like, this is crap. You guys are stupid for watching it. They bust into his apartment, capture him. They bolt two, they look like 40 or 45s to his hands. Like they bolt them to his hands. So he can't do anything but pull a trigger. And now he's on this internet game show of that he's going to be hunted, and it's like the only way to win is to kill your opponent. But not big budget. I mean, big budget enough because they've got car chases and guns. I don't even know about explosions, but lots of ammo being wasted. But just like that, the heart of it was just that pure science fiction, what if kind of stuff. And so that was hit. Same thing with Upgrade. That was a movie that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I just watched that actually yesterday. Was Upgrade. I watched that yesterday. Yeah. Have you seen that one, Matt? Upgrade, where the guy gets that thing in the back of his neck?
No, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it's interesting.
As a creator, like, what do you like right now? Are you reading other people's works? Are you watching other things, or does that kind of dilute some of your creative process?
I tend not to read other fiction books when I'm writing a book. But then when I finish, I feel the need to be entertained. And so, in terms of fiction in the last year or two, I got put on to Dan Simmons' Hyperion. And it's hardcore sci-fi. And the first book, there are 4 books. And the first one is a bit of a slog. But once you get through it, you're rewarded because book 2 and book 3 are amazing. And it's just got this fantastic science fiction. The use of wormholes that people have figured out create a door that you step through the door and you go from, from Earth, and you step out and you're on Saturn, and you go through another door and you're on Alpha Centauri or something like that.
Right.
But then he creates some very, very clever stuff with the doors. And there's actually a river that flows through the capital city planet through a door, flows through that door into another planet. And it's this tourist site that you go down this river and you pass through, 60 planets.
It's like
And
Small World after all, but small universe after all.
Yeah. And then and by the third book, spoiler alert, some bad guys, there's been a big civil war and they've turned off the doors.
Oh.
And so now somebody goes through, figures out how to open it, but the other end of the door might have been frozen over by ice or something like that.
Oh.
It's an imaginative leap. And I suppose to answer your question, increasingly I'm reading science fiction because of the imagination. I find I see another thriller about a virus being released around the world, I will throw it against the wall because it's just lazy. And science fiction is, even go back to the classics like Foundation by Asimov. If you haven't read Foundation and you're a big Star Wars fan, I mean, there's a lot of Star Wars or Star Wars lifted a lot from Foundation. And it's just stunningly good. The imagination is out of this world. And I appreciate that in a book.
Yeah. I definitely agree.
Brutal on books. If they don't get me by page 25, I put them down. I work too hard. Stuff fun and unputdownable. I think everybody else should do the same.
You might like from Dennis Taylor. He calls it the Bobiverse.
Right.
And the setup is like not quite a Bill Gates level tech giant, but someone who's on his way up. Right. And in the first couple pages, he dies. But he's talking about his company's being bought for some bajillion dollars or something like that. So he went to the service where they're going to freeze his brain so that if they ever can bring him back, they will. But so he dies. He wakes up, I don't know how many hundreds of years later, but the world is completely changed. They've digitized his brain, and they want him to be a living AI for deep space exploration ships. And so he's figuring out how to be this new kind of being, and his name is Bob. And Bob finds out that, he can clone himself. So he starts making copies of himself, and so the Bobiverse is born, and it's all... the future of space travel is 3D printing, and because that's how they can manufacture ships, and it just goes into there. It's all based using real physics, which I find fascinating. So it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it was part adventure and just part exploration and just cool science fiction fun.
Yeah.
Science fiction, sometimes these things sort of move in waves too. There's Gowsie's Old Man's War. There's The Forever War by Haldeman. I started but didn't finish it, but Altered Carbon as well. These notions of, your brain forever and giving you a new body. Even actually what you're saying there had echoes in Westworld season 3.
Yeah. Yep.
Loris made copies of herself. I don't know if you're Westworld fans, but
spoiler alert.
I love season 1 is phenomenal. I watched all
fantastic
twice.
Yes.
Season 2, again, sometimes people get too consumed by their own cleverness. And season 3, they figure out what actually made them good again. And season 3 was fantastic.
Season 3 was a bit of a slow burn for me, but I got to get back to it because I got to give it another shot. I stopped I think 5 episodes in.
Yeah, it promised a bit more than it delivered, but the idea that you didn't know who was inside which body.
Correct. Yeah.
Basically allowed Ed Harris to say the wonderful line, "Am I me?" And they wrote the whole thing so he could say that. When you've got a character who goes, "Am I me?" That's pretty awesome.
So you do work a little bit of science fiction into your books and whatnot. How do you decide how much to go. How much are you going to go for realism? How much are you going to go into science fiction? Or even just overall, I wouldn't even really call the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies science fiction, but they borderlined a little bit with some of their
Yeah.
fantastical kind of things.
I want to go to the edge. I once had a publisher who wanted me to write more like Tom Clancy and make it more, deliberate, slow, and real. And I said I just don't enjoy that. I'd much prefer the Pierce Brosnan, even the Roger Moore James Bond level of believability.
Yeah.
Johnny
Moonraker.
Johnny talked about Seven Deadly Wonders, or as it was called in Australia, Seven Ancient Wonders. This is like Indiana Jones on steroids.
Yep.
In the present day, a hero going to these ancient places with booby traps. And I always said to myself with every Jack West book, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even like Back to the Future, I was always allowed one moment of paranormal or science fiction in the book. Because we're dealing with these ancient booby traps, ancient powers, everything has to be grounded in reality, but you are allowed one little moment where you can stretch science. I mean, hey, Secret Runners of New York, which in America was retitled Secret Runners, that's full straight time travel. That's young kids going through time, going 22 years into the future. And that's just, you put that straight out there. But for the others, for Ice Station with Scarecrow, for Seven Deadly Wonders with Jack West, it's got to be grounded in reality, but you can take science to the extreme. In Ice Station, the book that sort of catapulted me around the world, you're talking, there's this remote ice station, they find something buried in the ice, 100 million-year-old layer of ice, and they find this thing made of metal. What could be in that? They think it's a spaceship. They check the outline. It looks like a spaceship. I give it a real explanation for what it is, but I love the idea of science fiction.
Yeah.
There's
very Crichton-esque. I mean, that's, and even, I mean, everybody knows Crichton for, Jurassic Park, things like that. But I really like his other, like Airframe was great. Timeline.
Yeah,
Timeline
was great.
The book I thought was
the book was phenomenal. I agree.
And I actually really like Eaters of the Dead.
Congo.
Yeah,
what was that?
Yeah.
Brain was 20
Congo.
years ahead.
Oh, Congo. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's a story about a fantastic book and having all the right players as far as a movie goes, and execution just didn't quite cut it.
I think they might be trying to do Congo again.
Are they?
Oh, really? Doing it the right way?
I think the effects now, given what they did with the apes in Planet of the Apes, I think
phenomenal. Yeah,
that was good.
Project now, and you're right. They had all the cast in the world. That Jurassic Park came out, and so Hollywood then jumped on every Crichton book.
Right.
And not many of them were that good.
Right.
They did Closure. They did Rising Sun. They did Congo.
None of them.
I would still watch 13th Warrior anytime it's on.
That's a good book too. That's a phenomenal book.
That is a good book. Hey, Matt, going back to what you were talking about where, Michael Crichton had that Jurassic Park and everybody wanted to grab Michael Crichton books and start doing them. Do you think a big problem with that is the directors didn't understand what they had? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I guess what I'm trying to do is throw that question onto you when you're dealing with Hollywood and you're talking to a director or you're talking to a producer who sees money signs, but he doesn't see how cool the story actually is, or he doesn't get it. Does that frustrate you? Does that make you go, "Oh, it's gonna bomb. You don't care about this"?
Yeah, they don't. It's I've learned a lot being here in Hollywood, and I've got a script which is on the verge of being made right now, and I'm attached to direct it. Let me restart that. Michael Crichton is my idol, and Michael Crichton is my idol because I've read everything he's written, especially the early stuff. But Crichton was writing books, writing screenplays like Twister, writing and directing films like The Great Train Robbery, Runaway. He was, and actually he wrote and directed the original Westworld movie with Yul Brynner, which the show is based on.
Right.
I love the idea of writing some books, writing scripts, and making movies. What you discover with filmmaking is that the studio or the financiers, they don't see the craft, they don't see the time, they don't see the effort you put into every single shot. If your movie is a $50 million movie, all they see is $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
And all they want to see then is the $50 million it will cost to market it. So now you're at 100.
Mm-hmm.
And then all they're worried about is, can you make $200 million at the box office? Because the theaters take half. So for them, it's just a monolith of your $50 million. So when they saw Crichton's Jurassic Park pop, they just looked at all the others and they said, hey, if we can get Sam Jackson and Sharon Stone and put him in Sphere, one of his other books, it'll be a hit. And I mean, Sphere is, the movie is just goes on and on and on. So
book is great.
The book is
Dustin
awesome.
Hoffman was in that too, wasn't he?
Sorry?
Wasn't Dustin Hoffman in that one too? It was Dustin Hoffman, Sam Jackson. Yeah.
So
Queen
to
Latifah.
answer the question, it's I'm never going to be one of those authors who sells his book to Hollywood and goes, wah, you know, they change stuff. They always change stuff. You've seen your favorite books get changed by movie studios.
Right.
You're lucky if the executives have actually read the book. You know, they might have read a one-page summary written by a 22-year-old college student, and they go, oh, wow, this is a cool story. It's about these Marines in Antarctica at this ice station. That sounds pretty good. Sure. So as an author, the only power you have is not to sell your rights. And every time I've sold movie rights to my books, and I've sold them to Disney, Fox, Paramount, Sony, ABC TV, I've always looked at the people and thought, will this person be true to my book? And for whatever reason, they haven't got made. And sometimes they're very banal and silly reasons. And the main reason is they're too expensive. But,
well, okay. So I'm looking at let's just break it down to the Seven Deadly. You always confuse me with the title behind you, because why did it change from Seven Ancient Wonders to Seven Deadly Wonders? Why did that change? Yeah, why did that change?
Okay.
Do Americans not know what ancient means, or what's going on?
Do you know why?
My American publisher was worried that viewers wouldn't be aware that it was an action story. They thought people might think it was like a history book. And so they said, you know, can you call it Seven Deadly Wonders?
Okay.
And they said to me, you know, like Seven Deadly Sins. And I said, yeah, I get it. You know, I can't say I necessarily agreed with it, but it's not terrible.
No,
so
it's not.
It's not the hill you're going to die on.
So yeah, it's not the hill you're going to die on. And I mean, hey, I've sold the television rights for this recently to a big company here in LA, and it'd be very interesting to see what they call the TV show.
Yeah, it's a TV show?
Yeah, so I used to sell movie rights. Now I increasingly sell TV rights.
Well, I mean, with Netflix and Amazon, Amazon Prime, that was my idea. Dude, I need you to talk to Netflix. I need you to say, this is the Huntsman series. This is what's going on. Okay? Because it's funny. People will complain about a 3-hour movie, but they'll binge 12 episodes like that. Right?
A book makes for about 8 episodes of television.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought to myself, oh man, I hope that happens. And I'm going to say this. I know you have no control, but whoever is listening to this, possibly that has control, Chris Hemsworth would make a terrific Jack West. Do you agree or not?
Oh yeah, he'd be great.
Yeah. He would be the perfect. He's Australian. You see Extraction?
I did.
Yeah. Tell me that wasn't Jack.
That's Jack. It was. It was Jack West.
By the way, I want to ask you real quick about the Jack West character, because he's my favorite character. Greg, if you don't know, he's kind of like Indiana Jones meets Captain America. That's how I view him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he has like the Winter Soldier arm. Like he has that metal arm, and I think is how you say this in French, the tout resistance. You put the a fireman's hat on. And it makes sense, Matt, because he's like going into caves where shit can fall on his head and stuff. And I thought to myself, that's brilliant, because when I was a kid and I was sitting downstairs and I was being Indiana Jones, I wanted a better symbol than that hat. And then you read it, and I'm like, I'm 30 years old, and I'm reading this. I'm like, that's brilliant. That's freaking brilliant. I love it. So I just love that small little detail you put into that character. I loved it.
It's hard to see it in that poster, which is my favorite. That's why it's up. He's actually hanging from a rope at the top there,
right,
with the fireman's hat and the falcon around him.
Right, horse. Yeah.
It's the fireman's hat. It's useful and it's iconic.
Yeah.
And I loved Indiana Jones for having his fedora.
Me too.
Yeah. Water drips on your head and a fireman's hat makes it fall off the back and things fall on your head. So I've been doing some sketches for the last book in the series because I've now done.
Can we see
5, 4, 3, and 2. I'd love to have like a broken fireman's helmet in the middle of the cover on the last.
Oh, don't do that to me, man.
Have you had fans like cosplay Jack West? Have you seen cosplayers come up of people you've written?
I have had somebody came up to the signing desk at in Australia. There was a Comic-Con thing called Supernova, and I had a woman come dressed as Elizabeth Gant, a character named Fox from the Scarecrow books. She was dressed completely in snow camouflage gear, and she had Gant on her name patch. I had a kid. I had like a 12-year-old kid come to a signing dressed completely as Jack West, and
That's awesome.
Had like a silver sort of glove on one arm. I had the fireman's helmet. The arm, I should stress, comes from the first book where Jack has just saved a baby and lava is falling across this doorway, and the only way to open it is to stick his hand through the lava to pull a lever. And so he turns to his inventor buddy and says, can you build me a new arm if I do this? And he says, I'll build you one that's better than the one you were born with. And so Jack has to thrust his hand through the lava, and in the moments before his arm falls off, he has to pull this lever. So he gets them out, but he loses the arm. And so his buddy builds him the titanium arm, which
nice.
is going to definitely come in handy in the last book. So you give your character. My heroes from Scarecrow with the cuts on his eyes, Jack with the arm. When you meet a hero in a Matthew Reilly book, they will be in some way scarred. Even the heroine in Great Zoo of China, CJ, she has all these scars down one side of her face. And you find out that came from an alligator attack where she saved a little kid at an alligator farm. There always are people who can get hurt. And right from the moment you meet them, I've given you some reason to know these people are not indestructible. I'm going to put them through, gigantic trials and tribulations, but they're going to get hurt. They have to get hurt. And you'll know that from the moment you meet them.
Yeah. Hey, with Scarecrow. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
As I said, that's some of the brilliance. I mean, we mentioned the Die Hard poster behind you. I mean, some of that brilliance even of that movie when it came out was we had action heroes like Stallone and Arnold, and they were just indestructible. And then here comes Bruce Willis that everybody thought was a comedian and a musician.
Yeah.
And turns out to be one of the best action movie heroes that Hollywood has produced because he was mortal and because he was flawed. And at the end of that movie where he's just beat to shit and he's just limping through and you're like, well, this is not going to go well. And I don't know. I can see that. I can see the draw to humanizing your superhuman type character, your action heroes. So
absolutely. Cool. Have you thought of who you would think would be Scarecrow?
I did a while ago, but actors get old really quickly.
Right.
And you might, it's funny because especially with, and it's a funny thing because I'm going through this with this project, male actors, they sort of peak in their early 30s. I think Bruce Willis might have been about 31 when he did Die Hard.
Mm-hmm.
Even, your Chris Hemsworths, he's 36, 37 now.
Right, yeah.
You see him if you watch Thor now,
right,
he looks so young to you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And he's beefcake and he's built, but he looks visibly younger than he is now. We've watched this guy grow from man into a full man. The funny thing is, for Scarecrow, I think Chris Hemsworth would be just as good. In fact, almost any actor named Chris in Hollywood could be a great Scarecrow.
I was going to say, Hemsworth has got a couple brothers that maybe you could bring in.
Yeah.
Hey, I think it should be Keanu. I think he'd be terrific because he has that steel look, but he also has that, like, Shane's one of those guys that, Shane is actually the guy's actual name, Greg. It's Shane Scarecrow Schofield. He's I kind of always pictured him as a cross between John McClane, actually, and I can't think of some sort of really good soldier. Because he's a Marine, correct?
He's a Marine. And the funny thing with Keanu Reeves, I mean, he must be, I think he's 50.
Yeah, he's 50.
Oh, I think he's pushing 60. He's like mid-50s.
Eternally young.
Yeah.
And the John Wick movies, they're a really interesting sort of piece of filmmaking. Because it's funny, I see the John Wick movies, Atomic Blonde, they're actually not the kinds of movies that I enjoy. I prefer watching a Die Hard, or watching my heroes get beaten up, to watch John Wick run through a room. It's very stylized sort of violence where, you're sort of like, because they're not firing any blanks. The guns are all made of rubber, and they just put the effects in after the fact.
Muzzle flash, yeah.
And I don't care about henchman number 27. I watch these movies, and literally it's just an endless stream of henchmen. At least in Kill Bill Volume 1, Uma Thurman used her sword to kill the crazy 88. It was, let's go through 88 guys and get them with a samurai sword. At least you knew what you were getting. But to me, I like to watch somebody who has to struggle with every battle, rather than go, okay, here we go, we're going for 5 minutes of shooting henchmen.
Right. So did you enjoy Atomic Blonde? That staircase scene, she got her ass kicked.
I've tried Atomic Blonde a few times, and I've never got through it.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like, again, good style. What happens with some of these movies is, increasingly now we're seeing stunt coordinators becoming film directors.
That's who I was going to suggest for Seven Deadly Wonders for your Netflix series, but you don't have control over that. Sorry.
These guys now have become so big, they're making John Wick or Extraction. The guy with an Extraction, Sam Hargrave, was the stunt coordinator for a bunch of his previous movies. So, and let's be honest, in a Hollywood movie like Fast and Furious, all the action scenes are done by a dedicated stunt filmmaking team.
Right.
The film's director is probably not even there. So they specialize in this sort of thing. And so we're getting, it's almost a new genre, the John Wick genre, of 95 minutes of stunt scene, small break, another stunt scene. They're just, and I get that there's a market for that, but I know I'm not that market.
Okay, interesting.
Well, and I think I've been watching like Asian import films since my late teens, early 20s, and kind of that style of filmmaking you're talking about. I mean, I remember watching The Raid 12 years ago, maybe. I mean, it's very much not a new thing for me to see some of this style, but it seems like a lot of people are like, oh, have you seen this new thing? I'm like, dude, that's been like, broaden your horizons, because there's a whole other film market out there that is phenomenal.
Yeah. Greg, I believe in college you told me about Gung Fu, and I thought, what is that? And then all of a sudden I see John Wick doing it. Yeah. But that was like 20 years later.
It's 20 years ago. That's it. It's stylized gunfights. Again, maybe I just sort of show my age, but I don't believe the hero's I don't believe the hero's ever in danger. I
see where you're going.
I mean, I remember, again, No Country for Old Men, which is not really an action movie, but as a piece of sustained suspense, that really sort of grabbed you and twisted you, and then twisted you some more. And I felt he was in actual jeopardy, and the villain, played by Javier Bardem, was genuinely scary villain with his cow punching attic drill thing.
Yeah, what a weird weapon to choose out of a hitman to carry around a tank like that. And then,
well, I can't remember the name of the film. I want to say Eastern Promises, but I'm not sure.
Yes, with Hugo Mortensen, right?
Mortensen,
Hugo?
yeah.
Mortensen, yeah.
The guy who played Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings. He did a Russian mobster movie. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not just him, but his family. I mean, you're genuinely concerned for their safety, and it does add a different level to the movie.
Yeah.
Well, one that comes to mind as we discuss this, one that I think bridges the gap very well, is Taken with Liam Neeson.
Yes.
A lot of henchmen get killed in Taken, but there's something visceral and real in the whole thing.
Yeah.
That really me, Taken one, the first one.
I agree. Yeah, Taken one.
I'm a father. I have daughters. I mean, so yeah, that whole film was, you're like, oh, and you hope that someone around you like, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that if anything happens. I'm not saying I want to intentionally do it, but if it happens, I want to be prepared to do it. But yeah. And by the way, I think Henchman 26 will be my Halloween costume this year. I think Henchman 26. That's me.
Hey, Matt.
So if you ever see me if you ever at a Comic-Con in Chicago area, I might come up to you and be Henchman 26. So be prepared for that.
All right.
Matt, when you're designing, this is something I've always wanted to ask you. When you're designing, like when you designed Seven Deadly Wonders, was that just an intent, one book, or did you have this grand design of what it's turning into?
So the honest truth is Seven Wonders is a self-contained story.
Okay.
Seven Wonders has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
I did leave a couple of loose threads in there, which I could take up later. And I enjoyed it so much that I thought I'll do a sequel. And I'd actually learned, if I permit me the long answer.
Go ahead.
Ice Station. When I wrote the sequel to Ice Station, it was called Area 7. And then the third book was called Scarecrow. And I met a lot of people who never realized Area 7 was a sequel to Ice Station. They read Ice Station and then they read Scarecrow because they knew the hero of Ice Station was a guy named Scarecrow. And it was a bit like, James Bond movies all have different titles. They're not called James Bond 2 or James Bond 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I wrote we'll call it Seven Deadly Wonders, when I wrote that and I enjoyed it, I thought I want to write a sequel. And so I thought, well, why don't I call the next one The Six Sacred Stones? And I'll start a countdown. So it'll be the seven Ancient Wonders, Six Sacred Stones, Five Greatest Warriors, Four Legendary Kingdoms. And so when I did the second one, Six Sacred Stones, that was when I started to think of a far larger series. I gave myself a little escape valve after the Five Greatest Warriors. So Six Stones and Five Warriors are essentially one story. So Seven Wonders is one story. Six Stones and Five Warriors is another one. And I gave myself a rest after that because these books wear you out. And after Five Warriors, I did a new Scarecrow book, Scarecrow and the Army of Thieves. I wrote The Tournament, Great Zoo of China. Did a few standalones because you don't want to be writing series your whole life. You have to jump out and do other stuff. And I loved writing The Tournament. That's one of my favorites. And
I just bought that book. I'm going to start reading that actually tonight.
Well, it's got the quite explicit sex scenes in it. Very popular with female.
Nice, Matt.
And I mean, it's set during a chess tournament in Constantinople in 1546.
Oh, see, you had me at that setup.
And there's
Constantinople, so yeah.
You imagine being an action thriller writer who calls his publisher and says, "I've written this book in secret. It's about a chess tournament in the 1500s," and they go, "Okay." Because I'm on a tangent of a tangent. I will get back to the Seven Wonders series in a second.
No, go ahead. No, go for it.
At some point in their life, every commercially successful author turns up at their publisher and says, I want to win a prize. I want to win an award. And I reckon I can. And I'm sure they thought when I wrote tournament, they go, oh, Matt Reilly's gone off his rocker and now he thinks he's going to win the award. And the tournament, it's how I would do the Name of the Rose. The British delegation gets to this tournament. They've invited every king in Europe has been invited to send their best player at chess to Constantinople. But the Sultan's going to cheat. There's going to be poisoning of players. There's sex parties at night. And there's a murder on the first night. And so the Sultan asks one of the English members of the English delegation to find the killer while the tournament goes on. And then there's a second murder, and there's a third, and the bodies are piling up. And it's I love tournament. It's just Matthew Reilly going bonkers.
I'm writing this down because I gotta read this.
Yeah. How do you say the character's Elizabeth's teacher's name? How do you say his last name? Is it Ashtam?
Askham.
Askham. Thank you.
Roger Askham, and he was a real person. So the funny thing about the tournament is there's a 13-year-old girl named Bess who will grow up to be Queen Elizabeth I. And Askham was her real-life teacher, and Henry VIII is the King of England at the time, so he's the one who received the invite. So Michelangelo has been hired to build the chess set. Ivan the Terrible is there representing, the Duchy of Muscovy and, all these people who were actually alive in 1546, which was the peak of the Islamic Empire.
Yeah.
I had an enormous amount of fun. And so that come back from my tangent from tangent. I did 7 Wonders, 6 Sacred Stones, 5 Greatest Warriors, did a bunch of standalones and said, okay, I want to come back to Jack West. And if I come back to do the 4, then fans will expect me to do 3, 2, and 1. And so 4 Legendary Kingdoms comes out in 2016. It's been 7 years since 5 Warriors. So I decided I'm just going to make everybody age 8 years. So 8 years has passed. Lily has gone from being, roughly 12 years old to being 20 years old. And 4 Legendary Kingdoms is just like this. It's more like a Scarecrow book than a Jack West book. It's an jolt of an adventure book. It's literally like Indiana Jones being put into the Hunger Games. That's sort of what 4 Kingdoms would be. Jack is thrown into this giant contest where he's got to fight for his life. So having been rested for 8 years, 4 Kingdoms starts with Jack waking up in a cell with his head shaven, and then the door bursts open and someone comes in trying to kill him, and he's got to defend himself. And that's paid. And so then 4 Kingdoms laid some threads for the 3 Secret Cities, which rolls into the 2 Lost Mountains, which is the one that comes out in October. And then all of it is setting up the final one, the one something. I don't tell anybody the title. I don't even tell my publisher the title.
You don't tell you the title? Okay, I thought you'd give us something. But let's talk about
I had read that titles are a struggle sometimes for you in particular. That was on your bio page.
Early on they were. With the Jack West books, no, I've sort of got them right each time. So.
Well, and I want to ask. Sorry, John. I know I'm cutting you off here, but this applies. Good. So the book series that I'm reading right now is Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files. Very noir crime detective. I love it. And kind of along the lines where he's like aging his characters as he goes. But one of my favorite, he's only put out 2 books, is Patrick Rothfuss, In the Name of the Wind, and it's the King Killer Chronicles. Now, Pat comes from Wisconsin, where I'm at, and I actually met him in college. He was like a friend of a friend. And I remember this was like, I'm going to say it was before 2000, so the late 90s. And we're hanging out. We're college kids, drinking and having a good time. And he's like, well, I'm writing a book. And I'm like, that's cool. And I'm like, can I see it? And he's like, no, because he was a writer and he just didn't want to send that out. But so his book comes out. It blows up huge. He gets the second one out there. And now it's been, I don't even know how many years it's been since, but he takes a lot of crap online from people who are like, he's setting up charities, he's doing events, he wrote another kind of like offshoot book, and everybody's like, dude, when are you gonna write the 3rd book? When are you gonna write the last book? So when you're planning out a series like that, and I again, I've read Pat's words, he's like, it took me 20 years to write the first one because he wrote it when he was like a teenager, started and came later. The second one came out in less than 20 years. He's like, what do you guys? So I'm pulled either way. I can see his side of things, but as a fan, you're like, oh my God, when can we get more? So as an author, when you're doing that book series, how do you plan that out? And like, then how do you handle the pressure of your fans just clamoring after you and sometimes just honestly giving you some shit that you're not writing all the time?
Yeah, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing. First, be careful what you wish for. You know, this is the dream. You dream of writing a book which, you know, catches hold. And trust me, having fans is a very, very, very good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let me digress again. I think it's so funny. You meet authors at writers' festivals or book festivals. What a lot of people don't give enough credit to is luck. That you write your book and you might find the right editor, you might find the right publisher who releases it correctly, puts a good jacket on it. I wrote Contest and I self-published it and got discovered that way by a publisher in Australia named Macmillan. And they were looking for a new kind of author. And an editor walked into the store and bought my self-published book. Now, that's possible, but there's no way I knew they were looking for that.
Right.
I got lucky. No other publisher called me. No other publisher found my self-published book. Now, for Patrick, I know the guy who was adapting The Name of the Wind for Hollywood, and I know who's they had there. Like a lot of pro sports people, Serena Williams or Tiger Woods, when they turn up to a tournament, there are media obligations. They're the big names. So when I say be careful what you wish for, you become a name. You become a headline. And that means if you go to a festival, you're going to do the newspaper, you're going to do the radio, you might do the television. That's part of the game. And so I in terms of what you choose to take on then, you know, you have to manage that with your obligations to deliver a book. The other thing I'd say is never read the comments. You know, if you post something on Twitter and it's controversial, you know, don't read the comments. You know, it's you're Patrick Rothfuss. You know, if you've got followers, are you going to get upset by the guy who has 4 followers who wrote back to you and said you're a jerk? Be careful what you wish for. Don't read the comments. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Yeah.
And remember, your fans are your fans because you write books. Sorry, Johnny, I know you got questions, so we'll let you go. But
no, go for it.
I can tell you from my social media, if I do a post about the upcoming book, the numbers shoot through the roof. If I do a post about walking my dog, it goes like that. The people who follow me on social media want to read my books. You know, I get that. And I've sold 8 million books around the world. It's given me a very good lifestyle, but my fans are the reason I've got that. So you always remember what it is you do. And, you know, I entertain people with words on a page. Sorry, Johnny, go ahead, please.
No, I'm enjoying listening to you. I'm one of those fans, so I'm very appreciative of your humbleness and the way you look at things. In fact, I wasn't going to bring this up because everybody brings this up. In fact, Greg and I talked about not bringing it up, but I'm going to bring it up now. You have a Delorean, right?
I do.
And your Delorean, it's in Australia, correct?
It is.
Is it? Did they transfer it to electronic now, or
they would do it? They were well advanced to make my DeLorean electric, and COVID hit. And it was going to be these guys who do it they have a YouTube channel. They were filming it. They were documenting the thing.
Nice.
And COVID has disrupted it. So unfortunately, it stopped it dead in the water. But yes, my DeLorean is in Australia.
It'll be kicked back up once this COVID thing's okay, right? Once we get through this. Okay, so if you can give me that link, we'd love to link it up at the bottom of this podcast so that people that are listening to this could start watching those guys.
So
I haven't seen any footage yet myself, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Are you keeping it like a straight DeLorean, or are you modding it to the time machine?
Dun, 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 dun. Go ahead.
If someone owns a DeLorean, you know they're a fan of Back to the Future. I'm just wondering, are you modding it to the time machine, or are you keeping it like a DeLorean?
No, I'm keeping it like a DeLorean.
Okay.
The full DeLorean story is I bought it. Somebody brought it to Australia. We drive on the other side of the road in Australia, so I converted it to right-hand drive, and then I moved to America. And so I wasn't going to convert it back. So I said to my buddy who lives in Canberra, I said, "Hey, do you want to drive around in my DeLorean? You know, I'll pay the insurance and the registration and keep it running." And so he's had my friggin' DeLorean in his. You might think it's a great idea to be minding Matt Reilly's DeLorean, but I don't think it really is. So I think he's doing me a favor. The DeLorean is fantastic. You pull up to fill it up with gas, and people ask if they can have their photo taken with it.
Oh,
They say,
absolutely.
Doc Brown, where's the flux capacitor? It makes people smile. It's funny that it's such a joyful thing.
Right.
Even on a really, really hot day in Australia, 110 degree Fahrenheit day, I actually the surface, the stainless steel gets so hot, you know, you think, ow. I actually tried to see if I could fry an egg on the bonnet. DeLorean.
And?
It wasn't hot, didn't add nothing, just got egg on the car, so I had to wash it off. That's the kind of idiot I am. It's the other thing I have, which you can ask me about all this, is I got the Han Solo in carbonite.
Yeah,
Well,
we're definitely
I've
going to
heard
hit to
about
that.
that.
We're definitely going to hit to that, and I'm going to hit that in 1 second. But the reason I wanted to bring up the DeLorean is because of the way you just explained it. That it puts it gives people, like, they love it, and you don't mind the attention, and that's why I transitioned to that story, is because you bought it from a guy. If I remember reading this right, you bought it from a guy who hated the attention.
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
And so you got it understanding, okay, this is what's going to happen, so let's have fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I dig about you.
I mean, I would drive it when I had a new book out. I would drive it to the opening book event where I did a talk and a signing, and people could have their photo. They could sit in it. They could do whatever they wanted. I was in the Canberra Writers Festival. That's where my buddy was minding the car. So we parked it out the front of the festival site, this big 700-person hall. And you walked past my DeLorean, and I just opened the doors and said, if people want to sit in it, have their photos, you know, go for it. It is. I am in. It's funny with the books. You might say, you know, what business am I in? I'm in the joy business. I'm trying to give people joy. I want people to sit down with a Matthew Reilly book and go, this guy tells a good story. Strap yourself in like on a roller coaster and go for the ride. And the DeLorean, yeah, that guy I bought it from, he had a pinball machine store. Weird story. But he hated it. He hated people bugging him at the gas station. And I'm not quite sure why he bought it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
It's like, if you dig Back to the Future, I mean, that car, it's a work of art. It is a sleek, beautiful, gull-winged, stainless steel work of 80s art.
Yeah.
And
the John DeLorean story is totally compelling as well.
And it wasn't fast enough. And making it electric could make it fast enough.
Are you saying you could get up to 88 miles per hour?
The speedometer doesn't even get to 88. The speedometer is 85. They had to make the movie.
All right, Johnny, Matt, how disappointed?
Johnny, have you ever sat in a DeLorean?
I have not, but I'm hoping this podcast goes so well that one day Matt just takes us over to Australia so we can sit down.
Let me say, I've sat in one.
Yeah.
It's a tight fit for me.
Oh, so it's a small car.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
It's like, well, when you see Michael J. Fox take out the entire seat, you gotta know that car's kind of small.
Yeah, that's true.
It would come up to your chest, not even there. It's a very low slung car.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
the doors are amazing. The doors, the gull wings are the biggest things you've ever seen. They're fantastic.
How often did you just
hit me
open
about
up
the
the
rib.
car? How many times did you just open it up and shut it? Open it up and shut it, just for fun.
Yeah. You just had to pull the handle and go click, and the hydraulics would just make it go. Like that. It's great.
That's cool. That's cool.
I had it parked out the front of my house in Australia, and I could have the front door open, and I could hear people walking by. It was a sports field down the street, and so people would often park, and they'd have to walk past the Delorean, and you could hear people go, "Is that a Delorean? What?"
That's cool.
That car is.
cool.
I don't know if I could ever sell it. If anything, the only thing that would make me sell the one back in Australia is if I bought one here in the States, because I just like being a DeLorean owner.
That's cool.
It's good for the soul.
I love how you look at it. I think it's great.
Yeah,
But I have a question for you in terms of cars. If you could buy any version of the Batmobile, what would you do?
Oh, my two favorite Batmobiles are the first Tim Burton Batmobile.
Yep.
I agree.
And the Christopher Nolan.
I agree.
Batmobile, the Tumbler.
The Tumbler.
The ones in between and the Ben Affleck one never really did anything for me. The original, the Tim Burton Batman and the Batmobile that he did for it, the idea of a big turbofan jet engine in a car and the sort of the gunmetal finish of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really hard. Back then, nobody had seen anything like that. Making dark, gritty superhero film and turning the Batmobile into something real and useful. And then Christopher Nolan just took that idea to the nth degree with a really militarizing Batman and the Batmobile that he had.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my two.
I would agree. What about you, Greg? What do you got? What do you think?
Oh, Tim Burton, all the way.
Yeah.
1989 Batman with the canopy, the way it, I mean, that
opened up like that.
And actually the inside of it, like the cockpit itself, I thought was pretty sweet. And the way he had like the pedal and the brake were kind of a little different. I mean, that's
closely at the pedal and the brake. I think he's wearing Nike.
He is
trainers.
Yes,
really?
They're Nike. They're Air Jordans spray painted black.
How did I never notice that?
Yep. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
I gotta go check that out.
Yeah.
But Lego just did a series for the 1989. But the thing is huge, and it's like $300.
Oh yeah, Lego did do that.
Yet.
What was he at? Oh my God, you got the shoes from Back to the Future. Do those work like the actual movie? Like when you put it on, it just goes zoop?
No, these were the first ones. So they actually have no engine or zip. These were done for charity.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't lace themselves.
Oh.
This one's probably run out of batteries.
Oh, it had batteries? Like it actually like goes.
Yeah.
The headlights, yeah. I remember when those came out.
You plug it in. Yeah, you charge it in the wall, and the front Nike lights up, and these lit up.
That's so cool.
It's
all right. I'm gonna let Greg take over here, and he's gonna geek out a little bit because Greg, I don't know if you have any Star Wars questions. You guys are huge Star Wars fans.
Oh well, John was very much a fan of the books. And like I said, I had read 7. I still call it 7 Ancient Wonders because I got the title wrong for years, but turns out I had it right.
You're both right.
But when we were talking about it, he's like, well, he's a huge nerd. And I'm like, oh, that I can relate to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I had read. I read you got the DeLorean. I read you had a life-size Han Solo in carbonite. Where do you put that?
Yeah, so again, when you move to the United States from Australia, that is sitting in a friend's bar.
Do you ask people to like take pictures of it just so you can kind of see it a little bit?
If you Google it, just Google Matthew Reilly Han Solo, and you will see I got a bookcase made for it in my house in Australia. It's 7 feet tall, and so I got a bookcase builder to build the bookcase around it. So if you Google Matthew Reilly Han Solo, it comes up, and you'll see a photo of me standing next to it.
Oh, there's a 15-second clip of you. You're right behind it. You're wearing a red shirt.
Oh, that's when we moved it. So when you move it, you know, it hovers, you know, like in Empire Strikes Back. And no, I did that with some movie magic. Got a friend, and we did it.
Oh, Greg, you're gonna enjoy this. I gotta share this. You're gonna enjoy this, Greg, if you don't mind, Matt.
No. It was good fun. It looks like I'm moving it down the street. I got over fat.
Did you see the picture, Greg, or did I do it wrong?
No, it's coming up.
There it is.
Oh,
you
very
see this?
Nice.
See how he has like the stormtroopers and Boba Fett, and he's walking it out to the car.
And there's the DeLorean. There's the
DeLorean right behind him.
DeLorean, right?
Nice.
Oh yeah. There's your DeLorean.
No, he's actually in the shot. It's in the shot.
He's in the shot of the boat.
I see it. I'm sorry. Yeah, right there. It's right there. Yeah. All right, here you go, Greg.
And so yeah, that's the bookcase that I had built to size around Han Solo. Because if you get Han Solo, you have to put him in pride of place. So
it's true. Wow. So how heavy is that, Matt?
I'm just short of 6 feet tall. I'm 5'10". So it's 7 feet high.
How heavy is it?
It's really heavy. I don't know why.
Is it fiberglass?
It's fiberglass, but the back is somehow really, really heavy. I don't know why.
Huh.
Yeah. Wow.
So when it drops down from Jabba's palace, it makes that big boom. I mean, you got to have the weight there to make that big boom.
That's right. And you know, you need a stormtrooper and Boba Fett to move it. So
yeah, that was really cool.
We put it on a trolley and rolled it down the street, and then we digitally removed the trolley, so it looks like it's hovering. Kind of fun.
That's cool. That's very cool. Are there any what else do you have? Like, what else? Like, you have Jango Fett behind you.
Like, are you a comic book collector, or are you anything like that? Or?
I sort of read, sort of the big comic books like The Killing Joke, or The Death of Robin, or Red Sun. I read one of the sort of classic Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel comics, but I'm not a comic collector. I've got I love movie posters, so I've got Die Hard here. This is an original 1988 Die Hard. I've got Escape from New York just over on the wall here.
Nice.
A lot of ships. If I look around my office here, I've got the Enterprise, the Snowspeeder, a Klingon bird of prey, the alien dropship from Aliens.
Nice.
So I love the hardware of science fiction. And I suppose when I talked about Hyperion before, these gateways through wormholes, I love the hardware of science fiction. And in Star Wars, the used universe. I even liked, even in the Solo movie, which had very little to recommend it, I did like how they adjusted the Millennium Falcon and gave it.
Oh, sure.
They just changed the look. They
Yeah.
gave it escape pod. Now, they didn't use it very well in the story, but I loved how they adjusted, iconic ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could imagine, if I ever wrote a book, and it would probably be in the fantasy genre, one of my biggest things I would love is if certain blacksmiths or something started to create the armor and the weaponry that I had seen. I mean, I'm a big sword guy and weapon guy anyway. I like that kind of stuff. So seeing that would be cool to see something that you wrote about and then have another artisan create something off of that.
Actually, as you say that, so the kids' book I wrote, Hover Car Racer.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
This is the one I sold to Disney for close to $1 million. It had these hover cars, which had these sort of hover. And somebody did this. It was a web guy I used to know, and This is paper. This is crafted out of folded paper. You can get it on my website, MatthewReilly.com. Print it out and build your own
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
That's nice.
So it's a real kick when you see something that existed in my brain.
Yeah.
If any of the books become a movie, if I get to stand on the set of Ice Station, I created that out of my brain.
Right.
To actually real, that would be a kick.
Or the first trap room that Jack has to go through in the beginning of the book. Like if you walk in there and you'll be like, wow, they put this together. Yeah. Yeah. I hope it happens. I'm very excited. I hope somebody gets smart and they put that on Netflix, and I think it's going to catch fire. I love that. I love your shit, Matt. It's awesome. I can't say it enough. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit more. Do you have time? I mean, we're over an hour here. Are you okay? Are we good? Do you need to go?
Yeah, sure.
A little bit more time. Thank you. When you're writing, do you enjoy the process of writing or the completion of it? What do you get more of a kick out of?
Oh, the completion is very satisfying. The process is addictive.
Explain that.
To have something at the end of the day that wasn't there at the start is addictive. Okay. And that's what I enjoy. And I'm not writing a book at the moment, but when I start a new one, it's sort of like having that little bit of a hit. That first day when you punch out sort of 8 or 10 pages.
Yeah.
You've got something at the end of the day that wasn't there at the start. And the completion is an extra satisfaction. So I enjoy both.
Okay, interesting. That's cool. Do you want to write anything else like comedy, drama, horror, science fiction? Or are you just?
I think Steven Spielberg is a very good model. I think he's a guy who started out doing Jaws, Raiders, E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you grow up, you get something more to say. And then he makes his Schindler's List.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as I get older, I'm 46 now, I think I would transition more into perhaps something a little more serious.
Mm-hmm.
If and when I have something to say. The tournament has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's more down the track. So, yeah, I think there can be different stories down the track to be told.
Have you ever read anything by Eric Larson? Like Devil in the White City? Or,
no, I've held Devil in the White City in my hands in a bookstore.
It's interesting the way, it's a nonfiction book. And he must have done a ton of research. And the way he writes is that it reads like a fiction. So he's obviously filling in some gaps with some dialogue and stuff like that. But real interesting writing style and still being able to learn. The last one I read was called Dead Wake, which is about submarine warfare, pre-American entrance into World War II. So just real fascinating, those kind of things. So I'm learning, but I'm enjoying it like a fiction. So that's pretty neat.
Nonfiction's hard. I prefer stuff up.
Right. When do you find that you are most creative? Do you wake up at right at break of dawn and you're ready to go, or are you a night owl, or?
Monday morning and Tuesday morning.
That's it?
Yeah, they're my most productive times. I don't write on the weekends anymore.
Okay.
Found friends and family, they work Monday to Friday, so to be social, I largely work between Monday and Friday.
Yeah.
And so when I've had 2 days off on the weekend, I'm ready to go Monday morning and ready to go Tuesday morning. Sometimes I might take Wednesday and go and play golf, get outside, see some buddies, and then go again Thursday, Friday mornings. But Monday and Tuesday mornings, I sort of turn off the phone and put my head down. It's when I get the best work done.
Interesting. Do you have any tricks that you like? Because I imagine somebody like you, maybe even right now with COVID and your lack of ability to really get out and go see things. And I'm talking about travel. Are you struggling with writer's block wise? Are you like, man, I need to see other things. I need to see.
I enjoy just stimulation. I enjoy the street window shopping.
Yeah.
Traveling. I had 2 trips cancelled this year. I was supposed to go to the UK. And when you go to the UK, you can't not be inspired. There are castles, Stonehenge, just old stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, Australia and the US, we're young compared to England and Europe. And you go there, Lord of the Rings could not have been written anywhere else. But if you grew up in England and the UK, and you could come up with that. But so yeah, I miss the travel. In terms of the stories, no, I'm okay. I wrote 2 Lost Mountains, and I'm ready to do the 1. So that's all there, ready to go. So it's funny. It's be careful what you wish for. If you could write all day, every day, you're almost, it's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Imagine just eating chocolate all day, every day.
That would
Pace
be
yourself.
horrible.
You'd eventually be sitting on the couch just with your face smeared with chocolate going, oh.
Yeah, right.
I need.
That's bad, right?
I need the break to help the writing be fresh. So that's the thing that I had to manage it.
Yeah.
Are your friends creative types? I mean, do you guys bounce stuff off one another, or do you kind of not want that influence from other creative types?
Most of my friends, especially from Australia, are not. I've got a very good friend here in LA named Stuart Beattie, who is a screenwriter. He wrote Pirates of the Caribbean and Collateral,
Nice.
and we read each other's stuff. And he's a great guy to bounce ideas off, and enjoys the same stories I enjoy. But as a general rule, no. This is the thing, who writes books? Your friend, your neighbor. What do you know? And I remember when I wrote Contest, and a friend read it, and sort of looked at me and said, read the first 50 pages and said, "This is actually pretty good." And I think they secretly thought it was going to be terrible.
Crap.
They said, "This reads like a book. I can't believe someone I know wrote something that reads like a real book." So
I can imagine. I mean, I know the people I went to high school and college with, and if I ever came out and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm an international best-selling author," and they'd look at me and be like, "Screw off! You are not. You're the guy that was jumping out of the haymound. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So that would be the experience.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Matt.
Illusion that all these creative people sort of hang out together, and I think some of the actors in Hollywood do that, but the writers and the directors and the producers I know don't bother with that sort of scene. They're too busy. It's a business.
Well, and some of the actors I've heard of that are they seem to be extremely humble individuals, especially when they're in terms of like casting, like can anybody else play your role kind of thing. They're like, my job is to speak the words that someone else wrote while pretending to be somebody else. And so they really put a lot of the pure talent of Hollywood is in the writer's room or in that writer's hands. And I, for one, would kind of believe that too, knowing what I know even from the comic industry.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Matt, with the Huntsman series, I think you have to do an unseen amount of research, and I'm really, I guess I'm a little bit jealous, Matt. I when you looked at Stonehenge and you figured out how to fit that into 6 deadly stones, and then when you figured out the Rock of Gibraltar being the one to the underworld. No, I had that wrong. That's not the king. That's not the underworld kingdom, is it?
No, that's in India. That's in
right. Yeah. Yes. You're right. You're right.
The Rock of Gibraltar, very secret city.
Actually, we'll go back to that one because I thought how you twisted the Labors of Hercules were actually about this great contest, this great game thing. Yeah. Have you stumbled across something, or is that your imagination going, "Oh, I know what this is. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into here and say it's a contest"? Like, did you stumble across anything? Like, I think there was a symbol of the machine. Did you invent the machine, or like, is that just?
Yeah, I invented the machine. With Jack West, and it goes back to Seven Wonders, and it really ramped up with Four Legendary Kingdoms and the Labors of Hercules that I just thought myths change over the centuries and the millennia. And the notion, by analogy, let's say the death of Princess Diana was around 1997 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a recent event done during the age of modern media. Yet nobody really knows what happened. We heard that, was it an attempt to kill her? Was her driver drunk? Were the paparazzi running around it? Now, let's put that to some guy named Hercules living in 1200 BC. Why are we even still talking about Hercules or Achilles?
Mm-hmm.
Or by extension, Jesus Christ living 2,000 years ago.
Right.
I mean, these are the notion of the myth of Hercules. It's so easy, that game of telephone or Chinese whispers.
Right.
Over 1,000 years, the meaning is lost, and in a certain way, it's sort of like the Nolan Batman movies, that he gave Batman a reality, a grounding in reality. And so, for Four Legendary Kingdoms, it was the Labors of Hercules. For Three Secret Cities, the notion of the city of Atlas or El Dorado or Toul,
Right.
and the city of Atlas. I never wanted to use the word Atlantis for it. I always
Right.
called it the city of Atlas, not because I hate the word Atlantis. In the coming books, what about the siege of Troy? What was that really?
Matt, you're teasing.
And so people have actually dated the siege of Troy to about 1200 BC. Again, why has this story endured? What were they really fighting over? Where was Troy? Schliemann's ideas have been, dubious and not really accepted anyway. And the Turkish government use it as a tourist draw card. So I love reading about these myths and then giving them a real explanation. Just the way made the Batmobile a tumbler, and Batman's suit, discarded military protective gear.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Giving the myth reality, a grounding.
Yeah.
I love it. I enjoy. I go and look at these things, and I've been to the pyramids, I've been to Stonehenge, I've been to Easter Island, and I love looking at these things and thinking, is there another explanation?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about reading your books. Speaking of books, The Lost Two Mountains, what can we expect from it?
So it's helter skelter. You will find out about Lily's fate on page 1. And Jack is a long way behind. So we had the Trial of the Cities and Three Secret Cities. This is the Trial of the Mountains. And there is a thing which is mentioned in Three Secret Cities where they say to the mountains and the fall. And you'll find out what the fall is.
I see.
Let's just say Jack's got to do something while falling.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So,
go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, like, as someone who, I would even consider myself a new reader, because if I wanted to pick up some more Jack West, I would probably want to go back and read Seven Ancient Wonders. But is it possible for someone to jump in now? I mean, it's possible, obviously. They can just pick it up and read it. But would they be able to get it all? Or is this something that I should really go back and start from the beginning to get everything?
If you want the full epic nature of it, you're really following this young girl, Lily, from the day of her birth through to the present. You'd go through 7 Wonders, 6 Stones, and 5 Warriors. Sure. I did test it out with a brand new reader who was actually a big sort of science fiction fantasy reader. And I said, can you read 4 Kingdoms and just tell me if you could jump into the series here? And she said yes. So 4 Legendary Kingdoms is the middle book. I give you a little recap here and there, and enough where, it'll mention, and Jack West Jr. had a titanium left arm, from the day of Lily's birth, where he put his hand through a waterfall of love. So I'll bring you up to speed so you can get the full thing. But no, you could jump in at 4 Kingdoms. Harder to jump in on Two Lost Mountains.
Okay.
Because you sort of do need to read. You sort of 4321 is sort of one big giant story.
And are all of these available on Audible or some other audio type of format?
Yeah, I was actually into audiobooks really early, way back with iStation.
Good.
Audiobooks, because they started out as books for people with sight impairments.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first audiobook I did for iStation was for the Royal Society for the Blind. And we did it for free. And as people started jumping on them for commutes, it was once we shifted to iPods when you could you could restart the book at the exact spot you left, rather than having a booklet of 12 CDs or 12 cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Once iPods came into play and then iPhones, it became for commuters. So audiobooks changed, but yeah, all my stuff is available on audiobook. I think most of it's on Audible.
Well, I gotta tell you, as a person with a disability, audiobooks are a lifesaver because even like you mentioned before, Gladwell, and I love his stuff. You know, even reading those, you know, development books or self-improvement books, I would really have a hard time getting through some of those if it wasn't for an audio version of it. So I'm so appreciative that market took off.
Yeah.
And it became portable.
But I still love this. I still love.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that. I mean, I do like a hardcover. I mean, there is that feeling to it. I mean, that's
actually, it's funny. I'm weird. I don't like the hardcovers. So that's why I'm so slow to getting to these. Is because I wait for these to come out because it's just easier to put in my pocket. It's easier to like carry around with me instead of a big book. But, Matt, last thing, what would you like your fans to understand about you?
Oh, no one's ever there before.
Well, we're here for you, Matt.
Thank you. The honest to goodness answer is I work really hard at this, and I don't just phone it in. I don't write my first draft and just email it to my publisher and say, there you go. For Two Lost Mountains, just like every other book before it, I wrote it, reread it, rewrote it over and over again, right up until the last proofs were done. I'm the last person to read it before it goes to the printing press. And even on that last read-through, I found a couple of errors which had got past editors, proofreaders, all the many people who'd read that book in the publishing house. And I work really hard at it. And this is why I'm so brutal on other books, that if a book doesn't grab me or a TV show doesn't grab me, I'm like, well, I work hard to do that. And so if somebody reads a Matthew Reilly book and enjoys themselves, then it's been worth it. So if I want my fans to know something, it's if you're enjoying it, I'm working my butt off to try and make that happen. And so I'm pleased.
Awesome.
And I don't read the comments, so you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if you did read the comments,
likes my books, so.
I'm sure if you did read the comics, I think you get a lot more love than you would get hate. And anybody out there that wants to hate you for doing something that brings you joy and joy to your fans, screw them. Who cares? You know.
I must say, on Instagram and Facebook, I do try to read the comments because they are actually. We've weeded out all the people who hate me, and now it's only the nice people.
Well, pay attention to Johnny and TheGreg podcast because I try to talk to you a little bit out there. I know you're busy, though. I know you're busy.
If it goes too far down the comments, I can't get that.
You're done. You're done. So I got to get there right away.
If you're past the first 10,
I get to about the first 100, but at that point, I can either write the next book or keep reading the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Write the next book, sir.
I really try on that.
Well, Matthew Reilly, honest to God, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. I'm really happy I got you on here. Hope you had fun. You seem like you were just an 80s geek like Greg and I, and that's, you know.
We're all victims of our teenage years when it comes to movies and music.
Yeah.
And you know, I wrote a line for the mother character in the Scarecrow books, in Scarecrow and the Army of Thieves, where she says, "I think music peaked in the '80s," and that was me talking through. I don't often talk through the characters, but yeah, you know, we were sort of privileged to grow up The 80s were an amazing time to be
Yeah,
a teen.
they really were. They really were.
That was where movies, we weren't yet making sequels of everything.
Right.
We weren't making Top Gun 2 30 years after Top Gun. Even, Die Hard. We weren't making Die Hard 5 20 years later. The 80s were full of original stuff. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Aliens, Predator, The Hunt for Red October, obviously at the start of it, Star Wars.
Yeah. Yep.
It was a hell of a time to be growing up and being surrounded by, and not to even dismiss Stallone and Schwarzenegger as well.
Right.
I mean, watch Total Recall. The first Total Recall is an amazing piece of filmmaking.
Yep.
So we're all sort of children of our teenage years, and
Yeah.
You
know what I keep remembering?
No. Oh, if you're a one-trick pony, just keep doing your trick well.
I keep thinking about Predator. How good the first movie of Predator really was. How good it really was. I think I haven't watched it in a while, but I'm sure it holds up. Maybe not the effects in certain areas, but does it?
Oh, and even the effects. The effects, I mean, those practical effects kind of do hold up.
Okay.
John McTiernan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Also directed October.
Cool. So, Matt, to end every podcast, actually, real quick, where can people find you? You said MatthewReilly.com. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, I think, is Matthew Reilly Official, and Facebook, I think, is Official Matthew Reilly. I really know. But if you jump on MatthewReilly.com, it's got the Facebook and the Instagram feeds on it, so you'll find
it's all right there.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. We always end our podcast with a fact of the day. You want to hang on? Hear that fact of the day?
Sure.
This is completely random fact from the internet.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun. An orca killed a great white shark near California's Far Islands in 2000. The smell of the dead shark's carcass caused all nearby great whites to vanish. A great white with a satellite tag in the area was seen to immediately dive to a depth of 500 meters and hightail it right to Hawaii.
Huh.
Wow. Don't mess with an orca, man.
I didn't know great whites hung out on the West Coast.
I think to run away, or they won't anymore with this orca running around.
Deadly orca, yeah.
Well, I mean, they're in the Great Barrier Reef. I mean, they're in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
That's warm water.
Great whites have a huge range. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the orcas, too.
Yeah, you know what I thought was really crazy about orcas? There's never been a recorded attack on a human being in the wild, only in captivity.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Don't keep them in captivity.
I agree with you, man.
That one.
Yeah. All right, man. That ends it for everybody that listened. Thank you very much. You guys are lucky. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, Mr. Reilly, is do not kill Jack West. Do you understand me? Do not. Like, if you want to wreck his helmet, okay, but do not.
One way or the other, Matt. When your next book comes out and when I catch up, we'd love to have you on again and talk about the novellas.
Yeah, please. Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir. Take care. Johnny and TheGreg podcast out.